You see this? Yeah, you see it everywhere because people walk into the gym and they say, let me put my fucking belt on and turn into the gym Iron Man. And hell, you know what? Let me just leave it on for the rest of the time because it looks just as ridiculous. Anyways, the point is everybody in the gym is using these things, and the question I want to answer today is there really a reason to use this? And is that reason good enough to warrant all these people using these in the gym? Let's find out. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy John Mango, and I'm here representing Beyond the Iron, where I'm looking to take your fitness and your nutrition further so you may change your life forever. If you're new to the channel, I drop fitness content, nutrition, tips, tricks, strategies, workout content, everything to build muscle, burn fat, get to your goals faster and more enjoyably. So if that's something that you feel like you could use in your life, then by all means consider subscribing. Also, I'd love to know what you want to see on the channel, so go ahead and leave it in the comments below, and I'll be happy to make a video on that topic for you. Alright, so like I mentioned earlier, we're going to discuss whether or not there's actually a point to using these weightlifting belts. Okay, now any and all studies that I'm going to be using in order to actually back up some of the points that I'm talking about here are going to be linked in the bottom of the description, so you can go ahead and check those out for reference. So what I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to lay out the different arguments for why you would use a belt, and then I'm going to either prove or disprove them right afterwards. Alright, so let's go with the number one topic, or the number one argument for using a weightlifting belt, and that's going to be that it saves injuries and it's just safer in general. Now I'm going to go ahead and argue this by saying actually this will increase the likelihood of having injuries, and the reason for that is because you're going to actually build a dependency on it. Okay, so let me go ahead and paint you a picture here. Back in the day, I used to use this belt all the time, and again, this is a very common belt. You probably see a lot of people using it, and unfortunately using it too often. Now, just like anything else, when you use something too often, your body tends to rely on that thing eventually, okay? It typically gets dependent on it. So, believe it or not, this causes a serious issue, because if you're always using the belt, then yes, it'll be just as safe as if you were always not using the belt, okay? The second you introduce this external aid, okay, and you start using it, what happens is you actually begin to weaken your body. Now, what I mean is, let me paint you a little picture here. I used to squat 400 pounds. However, every time I squatted, after I hit 225 pounds on the bar, I would rack this up, okay? I thought it was cool. I looked like a superhero, and I guess it made me feel like a superhero too, until I forgot my belt one time. Well, I figured, well, I'm gonna go ahead and try it out anyways. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. The problem here is that when I got up to, let's say, the 300-pound squats, I was not even able to do 300 pounds. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, wait a second. Typically, I can squat up to 400 pounds, but then I realized this is the reason why. So with that being said, the second that I stop wearing this, now all of a sudden my core that's gotten dependent on it has become much weaker, and I'm gonna go in and attempt to do weight that's anywhere close to what I was doing with the belt. Now actually puts me at a higher risk of injury, because if I'm squatting weight that is way too heavy for my core to handle, then obviously bad things can happen. Also, you got to keep in mind that this belt is not natural. So essentially the external support that it's providing for you around your core, which basically allows you to create what's called intra-abdominal pressure, that's where the benefit of this comes from. It's still unnatural, and I know I even hate using this term unnatural, but in reality, again, you're using something that your body is not meant to work with, okay? Your body is not meant to use this thing. This is just another piece of equipment that has been used to help people lift as much weight as possible on an absolute scale. So that only matters for people that are, let's say, powerlifters or strongmen. People that are looking for relative strength, again, powerlifters do fall in that, but this is like an aid. This is like, it's not like steroids, but let's put it this way. If you have two people lifting at the same weight class in powerlifting, and one of them is able to use a belt and the other one isn't, the person with the belt is going to have the advantage. Again, that's because it helps to provide a supraphysiological effect in terms of being able to brace your core so much more than you would be able to otherwise. otherwise. So I hope that makes sense, and that whole natural argument is really just to signify that this will cause dependency on your body that when you don't have it could actually increase your risk of injury. On the other end of this, if you currently have an injury, a lower back injury of some sort, something like that, then using a belt of course can be beneficial, but I still would just say avoid any exercises that would strain your lower back. And even still, you know, using this on almost all other exercises would still be a good idea in that case, just for the temporary time that you're trying to heal from that injury, and probably that temporary time where you should be staying home and not working out, but you really don't want to, in which case, hey, I sympathize with you there. All right, the second point is actually one that I just mentioned. So why use a belt? Well, it makes you stronger. Okay, here's the deal with that. In reality, the belt will make you stronger, like I mentioned before, on an absolute scale, okay? Now, absolute and relative in the sense that, yes, if I'm 200 pounds and I'm competing against somebody else who's 200 pounds, the relative scale of 200 pounds, I may be able to lift more. But one thing that you have to understand here is that powerlifting is a very small percentage of the population. So, most people that are using these belts in the gym are not competitive powerlifters. So they think, okay, I just want to lift as much weight as possible for myself. That's great. Unfortunately, you would be better off lifting more weight relative to your natural capabilities. So what I mean by that is this. If I weigh 200 pounds, my body composition is still different than any other human on this planet lifting 200 pounds. Okay, I might seem like I'm getting a little bit off track here, but stay with me. Now, if my genetic capability naturally is to lift and squat 400 pounds, let's say, right? But I say, well, that's not enough. I want to do more, so I use the belt. The problem there is that it doesn't matter, because getting to a 400-pound lift is as strong as you can relatively get naturally. And as a result, it's going to lead to the most amount of muscle gains you will acquire naturally, okay? And again, obviously there's no limit that you can just hit, but what I'm trying to explain here is that if you're just using a belt and you're not a competitive powerlifter simply for the fact of being stronger, it's actually, again, not the case, because the second you have to perform that naturally without a belt, what your body is naturally meant to and capable of doing, you will not be stronger, and you may, again, be weaker. Now, what I mentioned earlier is another point. So people will say, well, increases your intra-abdominal pressure. That is true, but again, the external aid of doing that is simply just not practical. Now, again, let's go back to that squatting story of before. So I was able to squat 400 pounds for one rep years back, okay, with the belt. But if you take the belt away, I wasn't even able to squat 350 pounds for more than one rep. Okay, so you could almost say that the belt added roughly 100 pounds on my squat. Now, it may seem like I'm lifting less weight, because now I'm only doing, let's say, 315 pounds for maybe 6, 7, 8 reps, right? And I can't do 400 just yet, but I'm not using a belt. And the point there is that in order to increase abdominal pressure, you want to do it naturally. The second you start introducing this in there, okay, is now you've actually taken functionality out of the exercise. Because yes, if your goal is to lift as much weight as possible, then that's great. That is functional for the purpose of only lifting more weight. But I would argue that you're missing the point that lifting more weight is functional in so many other areas of your life, like translating to the outside world if you need to lift a lot of weight here, there, making your body stronger to withstand and beat old age over time, all that good stuff, right? But if you start using this, your core is becoming weaker, and a weaker core is definitely a bad thing when it comes to day-to-day living. Everybody knows this. A strong core is always a good thing. Bad posture, usually a result of a weak core. So, in reality, using this not only makes you weaker from a naturally relative scale in the gym, but it also makes you weaker, extremely weaker, and much less functional outside of the gym. And let's be honest, nobody gives a shit how much weight you can lift, okay? Nobody does. I'm sorry. It's just a fact. So if you want to use this just to lift more weight in the gym, again, better off just not using it and getting naturally strong, helping to build the core while you do it. So when you're doing those compound lifts like the squat and you're not using a belt, actually targeting the core as a secondary muscle group, and you're hitting it pretty hard. But if you're doing this, you actually have to directly hit the core that much more just to get the same benefits. So again, it just doesn't seem worth it to be using this. All right, I got a good one for you now. It makes your waist smaller. This is hilarious, okay? Now, you also see a lot of bodybuilders. People would argue, well, bodybuilders wear them, and bodybuilders actually tend to wear them for the reason that I just said. They think that this actually has anything to do with keeping your waist smaller, and this would essentially be equivalent to a friggin' corset, okay? To a waist trainer, for crying out loud. And obviously, that is simply not the case. Let me explain my point a little bit better. Let me show you my point, okay? Watch this. You see this? So these little notches right here, that's what happened to me when I was bulking. When I was bulking a little too hard, I started gaining weight. Yeah, what does that mean? That means that I was gaining weight in my waist. Doesn't look like the belt held up their butts. Yeah, so that's how I know I was fat. I had to move this notch 2 holes down, right? So, you know, that was back when I had like a 38-inch waist. I can tell you from first-hand experience, the belt will not keep your waist tiny at all. It will not even impact it a little bit. So any bodybuilders or any people that are under this impression are actually so wrong. It's hilarious. It's true. Again, there's no study to prove the fact that this works. Simply bodybuilders and their mentality thinking it keeps your waist, it essentially keeps your waist constricted, so that must make it not grow. But that's twofold wrong, because one, it constricts your organs and it just causes pressure on the outside, thinking that it actually makes your waist smaller when it doesn't, and as a result makes your core weaker. But again, bodybuilders are not looking for functional exercises in the sense of lifting more and more weight, or as much weight as possible, but more so being able to develop the muscles as much as possible, in which case this will not hinder that by any means. It still accounts for all those points that I talked about earlier, but in reality, yeah, you could use this and be a professional bodybuilder, but don't forget all the other stuff that they use as well. All right, that's pretty much all the arguments that I can find for wearing a belt. Maybe you could say, well, it looks cool too. Honestly, I got no argument for that one, because that's completely subjective, and a lot of people would argue you look like a dumbass when you're using it, especially to somebody like me who knows there is just no point of using it. However, if you guys have any other arguments for using this belt, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'd love to be able to see what other points you might have for using a belt, okay? But here are the 2 scenarios where I actually recommend using a belt, and you may have picked up on these 2 as I've already spoken about them. The first one is gonna be if you are a competitive powerlifter. If you're a competitive powerlifter, again, just the same way as if you're a competitive bodybuilder, I'm sorry, the truth, the reality is you're probably going to have to take steroids at some point. I don't condone taking them. I'm just laying down the fact. The fact is that you will likely have to take steroids, unfortunately. And again, this is the reason I don't recommend the route, but you're going to. I mean, if that's truly your ultimate dream, then hey, by all means, but you'd be an idiot not to use them and try to win the Mr. Olympia. Same thing goes with competitive powerlifting. If you have something that, although it's unnatural, it's not gonna harm your body internally, like let's say something like steroids does, but if you can get an edge, okay, this is the same as creatine to a powerlifter, okay? If you can use something that will give you a 5, in this case, you know, actually maybe 10%, 15% boost in your lifts, you are a athlete. You're trying to do whatever it takes to win. And you know what, at the end of the day, the rules are set. You go in at a certain weight category and you gotta lift more weight than the next guy. Nobody cares how you do it, so long as the technique, the form, and all the rules are followed. If this is allowed and it's gonna give you an advantage, then you know what? Take it. So long as you compensate and train your core enough to make sure that this isn't becoming something that your body is dependent on. The other and only other scenario that I recommend that people use this is, again, if you're probably a little bit too stubborn, or just for, you know, it's better to be safer than sorry, is to use this if you currently have or have sustained severe injuries in your lower back And you know, again, obviously avoid any sort of squatting, deadlifting, anything that would put a lot of compression or shear on your lower back. But you know, if you're using this belt while doing chest pressing, dumbbell, bench pressing, whatever, anything that you would usually not need a belt for, then you know what, it's totally understandable in that case, because you just want to make sure that you don't tweak your lower back. You want that constant support. That is ultimately why, or one of the reasons why, these belts were created in the first place. Okay, so again, it's gonna help your lifts on overhead press, on bench press. Yeah, it might help a little bit, but it's just so unnecessary, and in the grand scheme of things, it could hinder you more than help you. Just get strong naturally. You don't need this aid unless you're a competitive powerlifter, or you absolutely can't do without it because of a previous injury, okay? Other than that, if you've gotten used to using this belt on all your pressing, on your overhead press, your squats, your deadlifts, I'm telling you right now, you're doing yourself a massive disservice by using this, because you're losing out on so much actual natural strength that your body is capable of, and it's really just holding you back at that point. Take it from somebody who used this and depended on it for years. I did it the wrong way, now I'm doing it the right way, and I'm telling you to do the same, okay? So that's gonna be it for the video, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and you know, like I said, again, if you have any other comments or any other arguments for this, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'm open to it, and I'll be glad to see what your thoughts are. And again, any other things you'd like to see on the channel, leave them below, and I'll be sure to make the video on it. John Mango, Beyond the Iron, looking to take your fitness and your nutrition further, and without this BS right here, all right? So thanks so much for watching, everyone. I appreciate you as always, and I'll be sure to see you in that next video. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed the video, comment below, share with your friends, subscribe for more content every week. I'll see y'all in that next one. I'm out.